It obviously goes without saying that throughout the pandemic, mainly 2020 and 2021, really to some extent even into 2022, it was a hard time for plenty of people, lots of people out of work, including, of course, bands and venues, who, for obvious reasons, bands could not go out and tour. Venues could not open up and host shows, and there were some programs put in place for both artists and venues to get grants since they were unable to make money in the ways that they were used to, with the bulk of their income, of course, coming from touring and live shows. And there was a program that was established called Shuttered Venue Operations Grant, or SVOG for short, which was established to help out artists and venues that were falling on hard times. And per a new report from Business Insider, many artists that acquired some funds from the SVOG program apparently were misusing them, including rappers Lil Wayne, Chris Brown, and then Alice in Chains and Shinedown. And given that this is a rock and metal show, we'll of course be focusing on Alice in Chains and Shinedown, where we will start with Alice in Chains because according to Business Insider's report, on March 23rd, 2022, records show the Alice in Chains singer and guitarist Jerry Cantrell took in $1.4 million as a quote SVOG distribution. The band's drummer Sean Kinney received the same amount, and its bassist Mike Inez booked half that sum, about $682,000. In all, $3.4 million of the $4.1 million the grant allotted for payroll went to the three musicians at the top. One thing that does kind of surprise me about that is that there's no mention of William Duvall. Obviously, at this point, only half of Alice in Chains is original. That would, of course, be Jerry Cantrell and Sean Kinney. I think Mike Inez, he joined shortly after Dirt came out, I believe, obviously replacing Mike Starr. So he's not original, which is why I'm sure why he got a lesser amount than Cantrell and Kinney did. But you know, William Duvall has been in Alice in Chains for 20 years now almost. I think he joined around 2005 from what I saw online. I knew it had been a while, but I can't believe it's been 20 years. But, you know, so given that, I wouldn't expect him to get the same as anyone else in the band. You know, less makes sense. I would love to know how much of what they got from the grant went to William Duvall. I'd also love to know his status within the band. I'm not sure if he's a full member or a hired gun. I would think at this point, he is a full member, I'm sure, to a lesser extent, I would guess, than Jerry Cantrell or Sean Kinney or Mike Inez. But I would think he's a full member, but, you know, I can't say for sure. But elsewhere in the report, it notes that a month prior to Alice in Chains receiving the grant, so I guess this would have been in February of 2022, I believe, they sold their catalog, like so many artists have been doing these last few years, for $48 million. So in the span of a month, well over $50 million went to Alice in Chains when you got $48 million for the catalog. I don't know the full grant amount. I don't think it was specified in the Business Insider report. But like I said when I was reading that quote from the report, there was $4.1 million allotted just for payroll. So I'd say it's probably safe to assume somewhere between maybe $55–60 million, give or take. But of course, that is just speculating. But some of that money that they received did go out to pay various staff, but it was not spent on benefits for their crew, including health insurance, which, to be fair, I don't know exactly how many bands provide benefits for their crew members. You know, maybe at that level, but I honestly don't know. But where the problem with that comes in, at least to me, is with one of their crew members, a guy named Scott Dockerton, which I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. He worked with the band for a number of years, I think almost 15 years or so. He also worked for Tool as well, I believe. He was sadly diagnosed with cancer in 2022. Obviously, he had no health insurance, like I just mentioned. The band, I guess, did at one point share a link to his GoFundMe, which they received criticism for. I think Newsweek did an entire article on this. A lot of people, felt that the band should have helped out with his medical bills or paid them in full, which, I mean, I would probably agree with, given that he'd been with the band for so long, 15 years. He was their crew chief. I believe he was also their tour photographer. I think they could have helped out. And, I think maybe to some extent, I get it. Just it's terrible that the guy had cancer. I'm sure there's other people on their crew that have other health issues or whatever, maybe not to that degree, but, so it's maybe one of those things where, well, if we pay this guy's medical bills and we, everybody else is going to expect it, which, to some extent, I guess I can maybe understand that, but I don't know. I do feel like, yeah, you could have, you should help out your own. And I personally, out of everything that we're talking about, that's probably the main thing that I guess I take issue with is not helping him out. I guess somewhere, I did not see this for myself anywhere, but at one point, I guess they said that they did give him some money, but the Business Insider report says that a source close to the situation said that that is not true, although I guess they did connect him with a charity that would help him with his medical bills. But unfortunately, Scott sadly passed away at the end of 2022, so just awful, awful. But that's basically that for as far as Alice in Chains goes in that report. So let's move over now to Shinedown, who is also brought up in the Business Insider report. Here's what the report says about Shinedown. 3 of the 4 members of the rock band Shinedown split at least $2.5 million of their $8.3 million grant. On top of those distributions, Shinedown's 4 members paid themselves more than $100,000 each out of the roughly $1.2 million of the grant that was allocated to payroll. The band's 15 touring production workers, meanwhile, received a combined $650,000 of the grant money, less than a single member of the band got. Publicists for the band did not respond to requests for comment. So definitely not as much info in that report on Shinedown as there is for Alice in Chains. But like I said in the beginning, we are, of course, focusing on the rock bands here. But I do quickly want to put up these graphs real quick that specifically break down how Lil Wayne and Chris Brown spent their grants. Starting with Lil Wayne, it's just crazy to see this shit. Over $2 million to settle a debt with his former manager, $1.7 million to his then current manager, almost $1.5 million spent on private jets, $500,000 on clothes, nearly 15 grand to mystery women. God only knows what that means. I mean, that could go so many different ways. And as for Chris Brown, $5 million on himself. I don't exactly know what that means. I guess just a personal payout. I don't know. $179,000 on a celebrity basketball tournament. Almost 80 grand on a birthday party. Not as extravagant as Lil Wayne, but still just crazy, crazy shit. I will put a link to the Business Insider report down below if you want to check that out. But as far as any further investigation or any consequences for the artists that were allegedly misusing the funding, nothing has happened at this time, but we will, of course, certainly talk about it if something does, in fact, come along. But for now, that's all I got for you. Thanks so much for hanging out. Feel free to drop a like and subscribe below if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time.